Greetings everyone. Welcome to Gurukul CEC lectures. I'm Mehak Chawla, art educator, Bharatnatyam dancer and disciple of Guru Srimati Geeta Chandranji. In this lecture, we are going to study about the folk and traditional theatre, which is we are going to study about the deep understanding and the definitions of the term which is tribal, folk, traditional, classical, and it is going to be in the context of Indian dance and drama and what is their interrelation. And now let's begin with this. So in Indian dance and drama form one of the richest and most intricate performances landscapes in the world, which is shaped by millennia of social life, belief systems, ritual practices, and aesthetic thought. From community rituals performed in forests and villages to highly codified tradition presented on temple courtyard and proscenium stages, Indian performances, practices exist on a broad cultural continuum. To understand this vast diversity, scholars and practitioners have commonly used the term tribal, folk, traditional, and classical as conceptual frameworks. These categories are not fixed labels or nor hierarchical rankings. Rather, they function as an analytical tools that help us examine how performance practices originate, evolve, and function within specific social and cultural contexts. Each term highlights particular aspect of a form, such as its interrelationship with community life, its mode of transmission, its aesthetic principle, or its engagement with theory and text. At the same time, these categories remain fluid, often overlapping and influencing one another across history. Understanding these distinctions, it is essential because Indian dance and drama have never developed in isolation. Tribal ritual practices have informed folk celebrations, folk narratives, and movement vocabularies, which have shaped traditional and classical repertoires. And classical aesthetics have in turn influenced folk theatre and contemporary reinterpretation. The interaction between these forms reveal the dynamic nature of Indian culture where continuity and change coexist. So in this lecture, we are going to explore all these categories which are not as a separate entities, but these are interrelated expressions, which is a lived culture. So you will be able to understand and define the term classical, tribal, folk, and traditional. And you will be also able to understand their historical development and aesthetic foundation. And you will be able to analyze in which of these forms intersect, influence one another, and how they continue to evolve. So we are going to begin with tribal dance and drama. In tribal dance and drama, it represents the most ancient and foundational layer of Indian performance tradition. These forms originate within Adivasis or indigenous communities and emerge directly from their lived realities, belief systems, and interaction with the natural environment. In tribal societies, performance is not viewed as a separate artistic activity meant for aesthetic pleasure or entertainment. Instead, it is a vital social and ritual function. Dance and drama operate as mediums of communication between human beings, nature, ancestors, and spiritual forces rooted in nature, worship, cosmology, and survival practices. Tribal performances accompany almost every significant moment in community life, such as birth, initiation to adulthood, marriage, agricultural cycles, healing rituals, and death ceremonies. The inseparability of art from life is a defining feature of tribal traditions where movement, rhythm, and sound function as collective expression of identity and continuity. Having understood the conceptual foundation of tribal dance and drama, we will now study about the core characteristics that distinguishes these forms from one another, the performance traditions in India. So, a defining aspect of tribal dance and drama is their collective and participatory structure. Performances are usually undertaken by the entire community or large groups rather than by individual specialists. And the distinction between performer and audience is minimal or entirely absent. Participation itself becomes an act of social bonding and ritual fulfillment. These performances are deeply intertwined with the ecological calendar, particularly agricultural cycles such as sowing, harvesting, and rainfall rituals, as well as hunting expeditions, fertility rites, initiation ceremonies, and healing practices. Transmission of knowledge occurs exclusively through oral tradition and embodied practice without written scripts, treaties, or codified manuals. Music, dance, rhythm, costume, body paint, masks, and facial formations are not treated as separate elements but function as a unified expressive system. The body becomes both the instrument and the archive of cultural memory, preserving tradition through repetition and communal reinforcement. The structured features become clearer when we look at specific tribal dance and drama traditions that are frequently referenced in the study of Indian performing art in the areas of academic or the exam which you appear for. So, in tribal dance and drama form the earliest and most organic layer of Indian performance traditions emerging directly from the lived experience of indigenous communities across India. Numerous tribal dance and drama traditions have been widely discussed in academic discourse and frequently referenced in the study of Indian performing arts because they exemplify the foundational principles of movement, rhythm, symbolism, and communal participation. So, if we look at the Santhal dance, it is prevalent in Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha, and Bihar, and are among the most studied tribal performance traditions. Closely linked to agricultural rituals and seasonal festivals such as sowing and harvesting, these dances are characterized by vigorous yet rhythmic footwork, coordinated group formation, and strong percussion based musical accompaniment. Men and women often dance together in lines or circles symbolizing unity, fertility, and harmony with nature. The Santhal tradition reflects how dance functions as a collective ritual as a reinforcing social cohesion rather than showcasing individual virtuosity. Among the Gond tribes, the Gaur dance and Murya dance, inspired by the movements and spirit of the wild bison, holds significant ritual and social importance. The movements are energetic and assertive, often evoking martial strength and group solidarity. Through synchronized steps and rhythmic stamping, these dances reaffirm collective identity and social order within the community. So, if we look at the Toda tribe of the Nilgiri Hills, performs ritual dances closely linked to their pastoral way of life, particularly their sacred relationship with buffaloes and dairy practices. Toda dances are ceremonial in nature and are performed during religious observances, funerary rituals, and community ceremonies. The restrained movement vocabulary and solemn rhythm reflects reverence, spiritual discipline, and continuity of tradition. If we look at the Ho, Orang, or Munda tribes of eastern India, it emphasizes group synchronization, rhythmic stamping, and repetitive movement patterns that strengthen communal bonds. And if we look at the Khasi and Garo dances of northeastern region, these dances incorporate fluid group movements and symbolic gestures drawn from nature, agriculture, and myth. And if we look at the Naga ritual dances, which are particularly notable for their strong martial character, use of weapons, vigorous movement that symbolizes warfare, courage, and tribal pride. Collectively, these tribal dances and drama tradition highlight key aesthetic principles distinct from later classical systems. They emphasize collective participation over individual performance, symbolic function over codified technique, and ritual efficacy over aesthetic pleasure. Rhythm, spatial organization, and gesture emerge naturally from ecological and social context rather than from theoretical frameworks. As such, tribal dance and drama form the cultural substratum of Indian performance history, providing the foundational vocabulary from which folk, traditional, and classical forms later evolved. While tribal performances are often perceived as spontaneous or unstructured, a closer aesthetic analysis reveals an internal order and artistic sophistication unique to these traditions. So, from the standpoint of classical aesthetics, tribal dance and drama have historically been described as raw, instinctive, or non codified. However, academic and ethnographic studies reveal that these forms possess a refined sense of rhythm, spatial design, and symbolic communication. Tribal performances demonstrate complex rhythmic cycles maintained through percussion and collective footwork, as well as strong spatial awareness achieved through circular, linear, and spiral formations. Gestures and movements are highly symbolic, drawing directly from animals, agricultural activities, natural elements, and cosmological beliefs. Rather than striving for the classical aesthetic goal of rasa as theorized in Natya Shastra, tribal aesthetics prioritize functional efficacy, ensuring ritual success, communal harmony, and balance between human natural and spiritual realms. This functional aesthetic forms the substratum upon which folk and classical performance system later developed. As tribal communities gradually interacted with settled agrarian and village societies, many of these ritualistic and communal performance practices transformed in form and function, giving rise to folk dance and folk theatre tradition. So, folk dance and drama represent the vibrant and living cultural expression of rural and agrarian societies of India. These forms arise from the rhythm of everyday life, agriculture, festivals, occupations, seasons, and collective emotions, and therefore mirror the social structure and value systems of village communities. Unlike tribal traditions that are deeply embedded in indigenous ritual cosmologies, folk performances generally develop within settled village cultures where community life is organized around agriculture, religion, and local governance. Folk dance and drama function both as celebration and communication. They preserve local histories, narrate myths, express social concerns, and provide collective recreation. And because of their strong regional identity, folk forms reveal the linguistic, occupational, and emotional diversity of India while also demonstrating shared aesthetic principles such as rhythm, repetition, storytelling, and group participation. To understand how these living traditions and sustain themselves across generations, it becomes essential to observe the structural and functional features that give folk performances their recognizable identity and continuity. Folk traditions maintain a community based character, yet they exhibit greater structure and recognizable patterns than the tribal performances. Movements, songs, costumes, and narrative format become relatively standardized within a religion or the region, allowing them to be transmitted across generations with continuity. These forms are frequently associated with seasonal festivals, harvest celebrations, marriages, religious observances, and social ceremonies, making them integral to the annual cultural calendar of rural life. Although knowledge transmission remains largely oral, folk tradition often develop distinct choreographic sequences, musical compositions, and narrative frameworks that can be identified and repeated. Language plays a crucial role in folk drama as performances are conducted in local dialects and regional tongues, making them accessible and relatable to the community. And music is typically lively and rhythmic, supported by indigenous instruments such as dhol, nagada, harmonium, flute, and cymbals. Costumes and props reflect occupational identities, regional textiles, and symbolic colors, while dance formations, circle, pair, or lines encourage collective participation. The emphasis lies not on individual virtuosity but on shared experience, celebration, and cultural continuity. Now, having understood the shared characteristics, now let us study about the specific regional folk forms, folk dramas that illustrate how these features manifest uniquely across different parts of our country. So, across India, several folk dance traditions illustrate the diversity and vitality of rural performance culture, such as Nat Puja of Assam is a ritualistic dance theatre tradition which is associated primarily with Kamatapura and Koch communities and linked to serpent worship and ritual practices. Unlike purely celebratory folk dances, Nat Puja blends invocations, symbolic gestures, music, and dramatic enactment within a sacred framework. Performers use stylized movements, rhythmic chanting, and ceremonial props to appease deities and ward off negative energies. The form demonstrates how folk performance often serve as a protective and spiritual function rather than mere entertainment, preserving indigenous belief systems through embodied ritual. So, if you look at Bagurumba of Assam, it is being performed by Bodo women and is widely recognized for its grace and lyrical quality. Inspired by nature, particularly butterflies, birds, and flowing water, the dance features gentle framework or footwork, soft hand movements, and coordinated group formations. Dancers wear traditional Dokna attire with floral motifs symbolizing harmony with the natural world. Bagurumba is usually presented during the Bagisahu festival. So the festival is Bavisagu. In this, the Bagurumba dance is presented, which marks the agricultural new year and reflects themes of fertility, renewal, and feminine elegance. Its aesthetic lies in fluidity rather than vigor, offering a contrast to more martial or percussive folk tradition. The Tippani folk dance of Gujarat originates from labor practices of rural women who used long wooden sticks called tippani to compact floors and walls of houses. Over time, this occupational activity transformed into a rhythmic group dance performed during festivals and social gatherings. The striking of sticks on the ground creates percussive patterns that replace elaborate musical accompaniment, demonstrating how everyday labor evolves into artistic expression. Tiffany embodies collective strength, cooperation, and the transformation of work into celebration. Now, if you look at Tertali of Rajasthan, is a devotional folk dance traditionally performed by Kamar tribes, especially by women in seated or semi-seated positions, holding symbols in the hand and tying as well. So, small symbols are tied to different parts of the body wrists, elbows, knees, and waist, which are struck rhythmically with handheld cymbals. The dancer maintains complex rhythmic coordination while balancing ritual objects such as pots or swords, symbolizing devotion and endurance. Terutalli highlight the integration of music, rhythm, and spirituality within folk practice. If you look at Bodo Cham of Arunachal Pradesh, is a masked folk dance drama performed by a Sherdupen community. The term Bodo refers to intermediate spiritual state between death and rebirth, while Cham denotes masked dance performers with elaborate masks representing deities, animals, and mythological beings, enacting narratives that combine Buddhist philosophy, moral allegory, and community storytelling. So these dances include dramatic movement, rhythmic steps, and ceremonial music, creating a powerful visual spectacle. Border Charm illustrates how folk theatre can carry philosophical depth and ritual symbolism alongside aesthetic entertainment. With this, I conclude my lecture. Thank you.